My name is Brian Fuchs, and I'm a climatologist with the National Drought Mitigation Center and also one of the U.S. Drought Monitor authors. As part of this ongoing discussion, it was important that people get an idea of just what the U.S. Drought Monitor process is if you're unfamiliar with it, and I'm going to give it from a data user's perspective. So the U.S. Drought Monitor classifies drought severity using a number of drought indicators blended with subjective interpretation based on the expertise of stakeholders and decision makers across the country. The hybrid approach utilizes both objective and subjective data in that the physical indices and indicators, along with local feedback on conditions and impacts, are blended together each week by the lead U.S. Drought Monitor author. The benefit of a hybrid approach is that the best attributes identifying drought can be utilized for every piece of data together instead of hoping that a single index, like the Palmer Drought Severity Index as it has been used in the past, can capture drought appropriately everywhere. The expertise of the U.S. Drought Monitor authors, along with good communication, allows for this process to be consistent from author to author and week to week. And just to note that, indices like the Palmer Drought Severity Index and associated indices made from the Palmer are still utilized today as part of this process. In the drought world, we say that drought is identified by those that are impacted or the different types of impacts that are observed. For example, those in the agricultural sector will have a very different view of what drought is compared to those who deal with water supply or water delivery. The U.S. Drought Monitor tries to capture the various types of drought on a single map utilizing the S and L labels for short and long-term drought or a combination of short and long-term drought. Even though it can be argued that an individual map should be made for each week to show these different types of drought, policymakers long ago stated that a single map was needed to eliminate confusion and to have a single go-to source showing what drought is at any given point in time in the country. This is something that's very important in that we realize that there are different types of drought, and the U.S. Drought Monitor is really trying to show all of these on a single map. The Drought Monitor process has been built upon the percentile ranking methodology. The percentiles are utilized in that any variable, regardless of the period of record, can be ranked from driest to wettest or lowest reading to highest reading to analyze drought. In doing so, each of the variables will fall within a range of one of the drought intensity levels, DX levels we call them, to identify the severity of the drought in any particular region. The percentiles also provide an idea of just how rare an event may be or how often it has occurred in the past. Past drought events can help provide a better understanding of the potential intensities of drought in a region, but also what impacts can be expected. In coordination with using data that is placed in the percentile ranking methodology, the U.S. Drought Monitor authors turns to determining how to analyze all of these data. Convergence of evidence approach was developed along with the U.S. Drought Monitor process as a way to look at all the available data side by side and to make sense of it all in a way that was consistent week to week. In doing this, it is like a trial where a lawyer provides all the evidence and the jury has to come to a conclusion based on the information provided. The U.S. Drought Monitor authors do something similar in that we look at all the data and information, working with our local experts around the country, and come up with a data-based solution that converges to where the majority of the indicators are pointing to each week. The authors don't cherry pick the best or the worst indicators to show that on the map, but we focus on where the majority of the indicators are pointing. Each of the pieces of data will identify specific pieces of the water cycle. Impacts will validate the physical data, but unfortunately they are not monitored in the same extent that physical variables are. What data are analyzed each week? With the U.S. Drought Monitor, we look at moisture deficits at different points in the water cycle to try and capture a comprehensive picture of drought. Because the U.S. Drought Monitor strives to show both short and long-term drought on one page, We look at measurements across different time scales, anywhere from what happened during a single storm in the past week and its effect, or in cases like in the Southwest over an entire year or even multiple years. One of the things that we really like to point out here is not every variable is measured on all these different time scales or at all different locations. Over the past decade or so, more and more high-resolution products and tools have been developed for use in the U.S. Drought Monitor process. Each one of these tools is looking at a specific aspect of the water cycle, from precipitation, soil moisture, evapotranspiration, snow, and even vegetation health. These tools, even with a shorter period of record, have allowed for the U.S. Drought Monitor authors to have a multitude of tools to help fill in the gaps associated with in situ data and have the ability to better identify flash drought development that was not previously available. As more and more remotely sensed tools continue to be developed, they will provide a very high resolution look on various parts of the hydrologic cycle impacting drought and will fill in data poor regions with some level of information. So in conclusion, how does the current discussion that we're having at this meeting impact the U.S. Drought Monitor process? The U.S. Drought Monitor product is based upon data being derived by others in the climate and drought communities. The U.S. Drought Monitor process is what I would call a very large data consumer, in that we're using information and data provided by many different agencies, many different sources, all looking to better represent drought in the United States. Products being utilized have periods of record lengths greater than 30 or 40 years, especially with the newest gridded and satellite products that we have started utilizing over the last decade. The question is who will vet the impact of the period of record for every product and variable being utilized in the U.S. Drought Monitor process and make sure it is scientifically sound? Will standards be developed for all data providers based upon science and testing of all these variables and the impacts of the period of record has on the output? Who oversees this, or who even enforces these efforts? U.S. Drought Monitor authors and the drought community need to be involved throughout the process, not only at the end. Focus should be shifted to the data going into the Drought Monitor and how it is being developed and scrutinized, instead of on the end product, as the map is only as good as the data going into it, and the goal of the U.S. Drought Monitor is to incorporate the best and most current data into this process. Regardless of the data being utilized, the percentile ranking methodology and the convergence of evidence approach has stood the test of time in the weekly production of the U.S. Drought Monitor map and can adjust to any scientific standards which are developed in the climate community. With that, I'll end my presentation and leave it open for any questions that you may have. And again, my contact information is up here. And thank you.